Welcome to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. On this podcast, Laura
and Shelby, both board-certified nurse coaches, show you how to make as much money as you want in private practice as a nurse coach. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. It is Shelby and Laura here with you today to tackle a big one, overwhelm. It's vague, it's everywhere, and we're going to spend some time on it today. I can't believe that we haven't done a podcast episode specifically dedicated to overwhelm just yet, but better late than never. We're going to dive into it today. Some important announcements. Today is the 9th. We are going to be having a spirituality and nurse coaching workshop hosted on the 13th by Laura. And if you're like, ooh, what does that mean? Then it's for you. If you're having that thought, it's for you. Come. Laura is really, really excited. I'm also really excited to just watch her in her zone of genius and be able to talk about this with all of you. I think it's an important thing. Laura and I really love the aspect of bringing in spirituality into our practice, leveraging it with our clients. It's a really, really amazing just resource and tool to have in the coaching container. So come, listen, participate. There's some rules for entry as I understand it. So come prepared to that one. But today we're going to be talking about overwhelm. And I just got off a coaching call with some mentees literally like 20 minutes ago. And I think every week we are navigating overwhelm, especially in the new phases, just like in a different flavor every single week. It's everywhere all the time, especially when you're new.
Totally. And a new entrepreneur. So you're a new coach and new entrepreneur and new identity. Like there's so much new. And we were just talking about how even being new at something can be overwhelming, but we're really going to break down kind of what overwhelm is, the physical sensations that it can cause, and then different ways that we've found workarounds. And the reason we're doing this episode today is because I just came back to record this episode with Shelby from my farm, and the original farm owner, we met from 8:30 to 11:30 for 3 hours to walk the property and for us to learn everything about all the animals. I have a koi pond. They need to be fed. They need to be fed with certain stuff. They have to be covered. There's like all these things I have to do to keep these fish alive. There's watering systems. There's like so many, like there's so much. And then she's saying things like, oh, we use this hay for this animal and this hay for this animal. And if this happens, and I'm like, can you spell hay? Like what kind of hay and where do I buy it? And Evan and I
does Amazon deliver this hay?
I don't think they do.
Can I set it up on auto ship?
So Evan and I get in the car and he's like, how are you feeling? And it's like, I had those pangs of overwhelm similar to the feeling of the first day on a unit when your preceptor is walking you around going, and this is here, and this is the code to the med room, and this is here. And you're like taking crazy notes. And in your head, you're going, I didn't get any of that. I don't know shit. Mm-hmm. And that was the overwhelm. But the overwhelm itself is like, I have the resources and skills to do this. So it's not overwhelming in a sense of I can't do it or it's not going to work out. But my brain was starting to get overwhelmed with, but I don't know everything and I don't know it right now. And that makes me deeply uncomfortable to not know it all. Mm-hmm. And that's how our new nurse coaches feel. And it was great to feel that today. I'm like, oh, this is how you guys feel all the time in so many areas.
Yeah. And I think it can be helpful to break it down, right? Like the tasks at hand aren't hard or super complicated. Like you're going to figure out what hay you need, Laura, to feed all the different.
By next week.
Yeah. You're going to, it's not rocket science, but I think that once your system gets activated and you're like, ooh, I'm overwhelmed, then even thinking about it from like a subconscious point of view, you were pulling back from memories from the first time you were ever overwhelmed ever. And it's pretty triggering for most, right? So it might be related to school or a traumatic event, or like it elicits a recall of something potentially really big. And then then we just like, we either figure out how to down regulate or the overwhelm compounds and it just gets heavier and heavier
Yeah.
and heavier and heavier and heavier. And then you just feel like you're suffocating. And
Yeah.
yeah, then what?
That's the
Right.
right
Then,
word. That's
mm-hmm.
like when I kind of was, I like to define things and look things up and see how they're defined in different places. And the definition we got for overwhelm is that it's a suffocating sensation where we feel like we're drowning under tasks, emotions, or even just the pace of everyday life. And like, as I read that, I flashed back to early motherhood. Like,
Mm,
uh, I had kids 13 months apart. There was 2 years that it was, yeah, I was suffocating and drowning pretty
yeah.
much all the time.
Yeah. Oh, I still look back on that time. I knew you during that time and I just didn't have
Yeah.
any point of reference for how overwhelming that is. Like what a feat it is to be here now and that it's all temporary.
Yeah. So overwhelm happened during the beginning of CERT a little bit. Overwhelm happened definitely when you quit the job. Overwhelm
Mm-hmm.
happened at different points of our business. I mean, think about when we were having calendar conversations last year.
No, I can't even talk about it. Yeah. Like silly things like Google Calendar stuff, moving. You and I moved a lot over the past five
Yeah.
years.
Chase Bank. Chase Bank.
Chase Bank.
Yeah.
Boo, Chase Bank. Um, like the things that all have a solution, right? We're
Yes.
oh my God. I know the people that we talked about this to before are rolling their eyes right now. Like, oh my God, we've heard these stories already. Move on. I can't. Like, it was so overwhelming for me during that time. Scaling our business, like creating systems, being able to take our business out of Laura and I's brain and put it onto paper and create systems that were replicatable so that we could hire help. I don't know if I will ever scale a business ever again because of how hard that was. Or like
Yeah.
I will need different resources to do it again because of how challenging that was. Again, all things where no one died, no one
Right.
was sick. No, all of these things were true. And still, that was a really tough season to show up for
Yeah.
work
Yeah.
because it was so overwhelming. You have to really dig deep and remember that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and that it is temporary. And then once we solve this problem, luckily for systems, once you build it once, it's mostly done and you just
Right.
tweak as necessary. But even being a new coach, you don't have any perspective that the overwhelm ends. So it's kind of
Yes.
like having one child, right? And you're like, oh my God, am I ever going to sleep again? And like, this is
Yeah.
not what I signed up for. And this is so much harder than I thought. And then when you have your second baby, you're like, oh, I remember how hard this was. I remember that, they stop screaming at like 4 days old. And I remember that they start to sleep through the night at
Yeah.
this many weeks old. Like you have perspective that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I hope that today we can give you a little bit of perspective that it's all temporary. It's all temporary, that
Yes.
you're just so new that you don't know that yet. You don't have that
Yeah.
experience under your belt just yet.
Yeah. The other like way of looking at overwhelm is that at its core, it can be a perception of lack of control. And for perfectionists, for type A's, this can be really big. And the truth is, from a spiritual standpoint, we don't have control over anything at all. And everything is temporary, right? Like if we zoom out, one of the tools that I like to use is to zoom out. Like, is this going to matter in 5 years? Is this going to matter in 5 minutes? Is this going to matter in 5 hours? Like, how transient is this feeling of overwhelm? And what are the thoughts that are driving it that I'm attached to? That really helps for me, that zoom out of I don't have control over anything, much less
Yeah.
my Google Calendar in this moment.
Yeah, it's all perceived, right? It's all perceived. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it can be helpful to kind of like be silly about this, right? So will it matter in 5 years?
Yes,
Will it matter knowing that we're all going to die anyway?
totally. We're all
Whether you
dying.
figure it
So
out.
what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, does
just
it?
have just to have a intentional near death experience. Like, just do a little meditation. You're on your deathbed. That can help, right? Like, that's the beauty of coaching, is that we get these little tools and we're like, oh, I know what to do. I know exactly what to do
Mhm.
because I'm being a total controlling asshole right now and I'm suffering and I just need to get a little bit of perspective.
Yeah,
You're good at this,
absolutely.
Shelby. You're really good at this.
It's because I've
Shelby's
almost died. It helps.
yes, that is helpful. Because I feel like when things get scary, you default to humor, and then you're very quick to be like, that's future Laura's problem or future Shelby's problem. Like you chunk it down naturally into like what's at hand, and I
Mm-hmm.
can get 1,000 steps ahead a little bit more. I can be
Mm.
like, yeah, but this affects this and this affects this, and then it branches off over here, and it could branch off to the right, and then it could affect this, and you're like, yeah. No. We're working on this leaf right now. Like, stop with the branches.
Look how beautiful this leaf is. Have you noticed this leaf before? It's so wonderful. So wonderful. And, team, like, I kind of, I have almost died. That is true. Was I safe? Yes. But like going through that process of like being in limbo of my aneurysm being really, really, really big. And then I've talked about this before of like what it's like to go under anesthesia. Like, I promise that you are just not going to care about Google calendars and systems and processes and all of these things, right? Like, those are just not the things that actually matter in your final
Right.
moments. They're not important. Are they necessary to build a business? Sure. But I think that the meaning that we attach to them, there's like freedom there for us
Yeah.
to lean into of, can we just make it mean less? Can we just make it mean a checkbox and not mean that the whole world is crashing down in on us?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I promise in the final moments you will remember like all of your the happy moments, how people made you feel, how you made other people feel, the people you love will flash before your eyes. Like those are actually the most important parts.
Yeah.
All of the little stupid parts of being an entrepreneur. They don't even come close. They don't even come
I'm
close.
like, I'm like thinking back to the last time that I perceived you being overwhelmed. And I would say it was during your last move. And I'm like curious for you, how does overwhelm physically manifest? Like when you
Mm,
go back to different periods. I know it used to be a lot of
yeah.
anxiety for you. But how is it
Yeah.
now?
Yeah. Yeah, isn't it so weird? Like the first time I moved, it was relief. And then the second time I moved, I was like, wow, this is terrible. And we moved 7 minutes down the road. 7 minutes. We haven't even rented out our old house. Like we could still have stuff there. It's just so weird. Um, I think so we moved this time and gosh, Rosie was like 4 months old. So I was really tired, baseline, which wasn't helpful.
Right.
And it's hot as Hades here in Texas. So those two things combined just extra suck fest. But
Yeah.
I notice that when I'm overwhelmed, I'm not actually doing anything productive. Like I'll just like do the same task over and over again. Like I'll wash dishes over and over again, which probably is rooted in anxiety, right? Or I'll sit down and I'll do like one tiny thing on my checklist and be like, well, I can't look at this anymore. I have to get up and like go pace. I carry a lot of energy in my body,
Oh, okay.
even when I'm tired. And I think this past time, it took me a few weeks to kind of like down regulate because we moved and then retreat. And like we just had a lot of really big things back to back. To be honest, probably the past like 2 or 3 weeks are the first time I've been feeling like really settled in our
Yeah.
routine and getting in a groove, and Ada's back in school. And yeah, it's a welcomed routine. But also during that time too, like we were going through a pretty big transition in our business, and being overwhelmed did not help that. Like I feel like I've been struggling a lot with like people pleasy tendencies, like kind of like old habits, old beliefs I've like
Oh, yeah.
clung onto, and like it's so frustrating and so annoying. And then it's even easier to kick yourself of like, why am I still here? Like, why am I still dealing with this? So I think that it's when I'm overwhelmed, old habits, old thoughts, old beliefs, they just like enter the chat, and I just let them. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a suck fest. Get in here. Let's all pity party together.
Yeah. Yeah. Overwhelm, there's like different flavors of it for me. And the one I dislike the most is fatigue, like severe fatigue. Like if
Mm,
it's like relenting fatigue where it's like, I guess I'm having a pretend sick day because I have to lay down and I have to numb. And that's usually probably at the tail end of consistent low level overwhelm over a long period of time. And then
mm.
I get irritable. And I saw a really funny video on Instagram about this where it's like it was a dad runs into their kid's room and he's like, hide, mom's cleaning. And it's like the mom,
Yeah.
you like wake up from overwhelm, you're like, that's it. Everything's gonna be cleaned. And it's like everybody kind of just cowers, like, oh, here we go. So almost
Hmm.
like irritability with a desire to create something I can control. And
Yeah.
not that that's awful because I can get some shit done. It's great. Like things get cleaned that normally don't get cleaned. It just doesn't feel good. It's not like
Yeah.
a pleasurable experience, but that would be my flavor of overwhelm. And in nursing school, it looked like a lot of anxiety, a lot of tightness in my chest,
Mm.
a desire to drink. It can look like a lot of things. And I think for a lot of our listeners, you guys are nurses in the hospital. One shift can create overwhelm for a week, right? Like
Yeah.
the nature of the work, we have these external circumstances that put our nervous system into a specific pattern as well. And I really wanted to like acknowledge that. It's been a long time since I've had a shift like that, but
Hmm.
that can happen at any time. It can happen on a Wednesday and completely change your Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I also want to mention too of like being overwhelmed. I don't know that the goal is to never feel it because we're humans
no,
living on,
big lives.
it's just, it's happening, right? Especially everyone listening to this podcast, you probably have a big vision for how you want your life to look, and it's going to be overwhelming at times to pull
Right.
that off. So overwhelm doesn't have to equal failure, right? I think that it's
No.
just like, it's a pause for reflection of like checking in, right? It's an invitation to check in, and there's so many ways to support yourself in overwhelm, and sometimes we just kind of have to like be overwhelmed. Like you're about to move, there's going to be probably a stretch of a few days while you guys are like moving and hustling and like
Yeah.
all the things that it's just going to be
What
overwhelming.
it is.
Like it's
Yeah.
just going to be that. And the only way to move through it is just to move your shit faster. you
I
know?
Let me give a framework around that because I'll tell you what old Laura would have done internally and now what new Laura is going to do during this move. And really what I did during my last move, as overwhelming as it was a lot better in some ways than I thought it was going to go. But old Laura would think, okay, I just got to get moved and I just got to get my whole house set up and I just got to get everything organized and I got to get every drawer organized and everything's got to be painted and my closet has to be color coded. And once all of those things are done, I'm going to feel better. So like
Yeah.
bananas, unrealistic expectations, all
Mm.
internal of my own, as opposed to as long as I can get my bed into my bedroom and we have a bed that you have to blow up. As long as I can get it into my bedroom, blow it up, and it's below 71 degrees and my sheets are clean, I'm gonna be okay. Everything else
Hmm.
is figure outable. That's such
Yeah.
a change in these unrealistic expectations. Having kids helps. It's like dishes in the sink. I have dishes in the sink probably 70% of days. They get done. They're just not
Yeah.
done 3 times a day.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a really good point of, and even applying that in your business, right?
Right.
I heard a lot of my mentorship call this morning of I just don't, I'm judging myself for not being where I want to be. And then I'm like, well, where do you want to be? And like, it's like not really definable, right? So then like we're chasing a feeling and then we can't really define the feeling. And then like, that's a really soupy standard to hold yourself
Yeah.
to. Really easy breeding ground for overwhelm. And so I just encourage people of like, can we just be where we are today? Like, how can we be grateful for all the things that are going well? Because all of these folks that were saying that they were overwhelmed, they have calls on the books and they signed a client this morning and like all of these things are still going super well, but like we're just so trained to look at the negative, right? Of I'm not where I'm supposed to be, or it's not perfect,
Habitual.
or it's not what I thought it was going to be. And I'm like, when has it ever been what we thought it was going to be?
Well,
Like literally
because
ever.
most human beings are running a software program that has frequent like bouts of I'm a piece of shit and I'm not doing enough. Like
Yeah.
it's like these, I don't know when they're installed. We have suspicions obviously, and there's lots of space to like go find out. But like we could go into the past and do like so much therapy and find out when they were installed, or we can just reinstall like new ways of being and thinking. And when we become overwhelmed or we're hungry, lonely, tired, physically ill, like all these other things, when that we get into that state, we default to these really shitty mind programs that cause us a lot of suffering and then can add to the overwhelm. So overwhelm is something that can build on, it can get lots of momentum, lots of weight, become really, really big if it's not dealt with like as it comes in like a healthy way. And that's why I love mentorship, because I always tell my mentees, and I have a new group that just kind of started, well, I'm just so overwhelmed and I haven't done this yet. I haven't connected and I haven't, it's like their focus is always on Laura's going to be mad because I didn't do all the things I'm supposed to do. And it's like constantly bringing back to, but look what you've done. Like, look, you're coaching. Someone's paying you to coach. You've been in business for 4 weeks. Like you are nailing it.
Yeah. Oh man, I love our clients so deeply and so
Yeah.
much. I love them so much. And I think that because our system works efficiently and well a lot of the time, that like we can get a little spoiled's not the right word, but our perspective can be a little skewed of like, well, I signed 3 clients out of certification and then I signed 7 more. But now all of those clients finished and I just don't know that I don't know that I can do it again. Like where are all
Yeah.
these clients coming from? And I just want to remind you that like, if you did it once, you can do it again. Scarcity mindset is coming to mind right now. Like, I promise that there are more people. There are 8 billion people in the world. At least 1 million of them will know you and like you and trust you. Like at least 1 million of them. So, we just have to give
And
ourselves some more time.
You got to sign, I mean, over a 10-year career. You sign 200 clients over a 10-year career, you're good.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's just the perspective shift and the levity, like the laughter. Evan and I are really good about doing this in our marriage. Like really good, because when we're both really stressed, he'll do something really stupid. And this happened the other day. He Addie's like pouring cereal or doing something and he's like, Addie, you got to do the dishes. Like, you got to do your laundry. Like, whatever. He's just wiling out. And I'll be like, I'll just go poke my head in the bedroom and be like, brush your teeth. You got to get shit done. And he's, I get it. Right. Like making fun of ourselves, even in it, as opposed to beating ourselves up. And I love that. It's fun to make fun of yourself. Like that can diffuse a lot of the overwhelm, is just laughing at the absurdity of the standards. And the comparison to others and the shitty perspective and the weird mind programs that we have installed that we haven't quite worked out yet.
Humor is great medicine. It really, really, really is. I was in a coaching session with Rob last week. For an update, everybody, Rob has officially entered a coaching container. God bless America. And we were having a session together, which is like the first time we'd ever done that. And what I love about this particular coach is he doesn't he's pretty tough on me, to where even when I like laugh about things or whatever, he keeps me on the hot seat pretty well. And this is, I think, Rob's first coaching session ever, and we're doing it together. And so he was talking about my need for validation. He's like, Shelby, you need people to validate you. And I'm like, yes, I know. And he's like, but do you know? And I'm like, yes, I'm constantly on the pursuit of other people's validation. Like, of course I need that. And Rob is dying laughing next to me on the couch. And he's like, you do need validation. And like, there's a way to like beat yourself up about that, right? Or like, I shouldn't need to be validated and blah, blah, blah. But like, I do. I love being validated. That is
Mm-hmm.
something that I can accept about myself and love myself anyway for, and just know that sometimes that makes things a little sticky for me too. You
Right.
know, uh, there's room for both. There's room for both here. That's why we like go and on our retreats too. We usually have like a fun moment built in to it all. Just to
Right.
bring the levity. Like it's so underrated. Most people won't make time for it, but it's necessary for the long term of your mental health and your
Right.
practice to practice it.
Yeah. I want to just share a couple other ways to look at overwhelm and maybe some like, I don't know, triggers. And if you're listening to this right now and you're currently in a season of overwhelm, this could be really helpful. But also, if you aren't in a current season, just reflecting back and thinking of when you were, how you felt, what the circumstances were, what your innermost thoughts were. And I think unrealistic expectation, comparison to others, feeling like you lack time management can be a
Mm-hmm.
huge way to have overwhelm. Addiction to overwhelm, too, right?
Yeah.
Because overwhelm is a highly activated state. If you've been living in that, you might seek subconsciously ways to like be a few minutes late everywhere you go,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like
Mm-hmm.
these like sneaky ways. And then physical illness, lack of sleep, poor diet, alcohol, drug use, lack of exercise, like those things. If your physical state is experiencing any of those, overwhelm is just so much easier to fall into because your capacity is much lower.
Yeah.
Um, and then transitions, like we're in transition 50% of our life. Like I'm in transition right now. A lot of you
Mm-hmm.
starting businesses are in some form of transition. So if you are tired and in transition, we've got a lot of recipe for overwhelm.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Being tired, hungry. What's the other one? Tired,
lonely.
hungry, lonely. I feel like I'm missing one. But like you add like any of those sprinkles on just like
Right.
day-to-day stuff, it's like an accelerant for overwhelm. Um, I like to, especially those of you who have babies or toddlers, like just think of when your baby is tired or hungry. There's no reasoning with your toddler. There's no, like, you're just playing by different rules whenever you're
Right.
tired or hungry. Play by different rules when you are also tired or hungry too. Or
Yeah.
you're in pain, physically uncomfortable. That's the word
Oh,
I was looking for.
yes. Yeah.
Um, like we're playing by different rules. Again, it is temporary. It will not always be this way. But it's a good time to maybe move a little slower for like 2 or 3 days, and
Yeah.
it'll work itself out. With some sleep and some snacks and some Advil.
Yeah. Well, and then being sick or
Mm,
having a sick kid or a sick family member that's a season of different forms of overwhelm as well. And I think the goal here, and I hope this is what's coming through, is that it's not like you're not going to have a life where you're not overwhelmed. One of my favorite reframes is, and I remember doing this, like waking up in the morning, picking up kids' toys everywhere, putting out poopy diapers out into the garbage can, like just all the stuff that you do and feeling like, gosh, this is like being in a negative mind space. Like this is I got to do so much. I have to do so many things. And like the reframe of like, I get to, because if I wasn't overwhelmed, if I didn't get to do these things, then what would my life actually look like? Right. So
mhm,
overwhelm is the hallmark. It is like the shadow side of a really full, big life that you've built.
mhm.
Whereas it's really easy to slip into that as opposed to I get to go clean alpaca poop out in my farm pasture.
I hear alpaca poop. It's worth a lot of money there,
All
Laura.
right,
That's what I heard at our retreat.
$10 a bucket, man.
Yep.
Yep.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Yeah, I shout out to Brandy Mitchell. I don't know if Brandy, if you listen to this podcast every week, but Brandy, one time I was Marco Poloing her and I was complaining. It was when we were scaling our business. She was like, "How are you? We should meet up soon." She lives in Houston. And I was like, "Dude, I'm in the freaking weeds." And I was just on one. Like I was like, I'm so over this. This is so hard. And I love, she came back on, on a message and I could tell that she was trying to deliver this gently to me. And uh, she said, I'm sorry that you have what you asked for. And I was like, yep, you're right. You're right. She's like, because it's true, right? Like you and I, when
Yeah.
we started this business and it had traction, that's what we wanted. We wanted systems. We wanted something that ran. We wanted a
Wanted a
team.
team.
We wanted all these things. And these were the necessary steps to have that. And so she's like, I'm sorry that you have what you asked for. And I was like, thank you for that. Thank you for that check right there.
Yeah. Well, if you think about like, I have a one mentee in mind right now that works full time. So she works on her business at night and she had a really difficult week. And so she was
Mhm.
totally overwhelmed, right? Like truly overwhelmed. And I said, well, what if you took the whole week off of working on your business, what would you do? Like if your homework assignment was to only do things that make you happy or that you want to do for the next 7 days, like what are some things that you do? And just like that permission to nurture herself, like her shoulders went down. It's like that, even just that shift in perspective, because at the end of that 7 days, most likely she'll feel like, oh, I get to connect. I get to work on my business. I get to have this other dream that I'm creating on outside of my 40-hour a week job. Like sometimes we need to rest and we need to stop to realize that we are getting what we want and that we get to work on this thing. And that's why I say don't build alone. It's dangerous in our minds without support. It's a really spooky
Mhm.
neighborhood as a new entrepreneur in between the ears.
Yeah. Spooky neighborhood. That's funny. It's true. It's true. It's true. Oh, yeah. Well, I feel like I could talk forever about like examples of being overwhelmed, how we've navigated through it. But I want to leave you guys with some takeaways here of like whenever we hear clients being overwhelmed, we've talked through a little bit of these already, but I want to leave you with a list to kind of run through. Um, Overwhelming with like being new, like can you just accept that you're new here, right? And that being new sometimes means that it's overwhelming or it feels overwhelming. Like the steps are simple, but it feels overwhelming because you are new, because you're trying to get your legs underneath you, and then it's okay. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's just okay if to be new, you are new. You're new and also not new all at the same time. You have so much lived experience, so much professional training. Uh, it's only new for a little while. Also to like, let's accept that you're allowed to be imperfect. Shoot for the B, not the A+, especially within like the first year of your business.
Yeah.
The gratitude, like Laura was saying, I get to instead of I have to, having a gratitude practice. One of our mentees today, I really love this. She was like, I take pictures of all the little moments that I'm present for. So like going to get tea with my daughter or my cat's cuddling on the couch or a rainbow that I see. It's little things to like
Yeah.
pause and just be present with. Do you want to talk about emotional and energetic boundaries?
Yeah. I feel like this can be like codependent relationships where we get
Mm.
overwhelmed by other people's emotions. This could be, this would fall into the category of a tough work environment because a lot of times tough work environments are because we don't have energetic and emotional boundaries. It's because we can't
Yeah.
say no. It's because we're constantly people pleasing. So there are certain personality types and certain ways of being that just lend itself to constantly being overwhelmed because of emotional and energetic boundaries. And if you're hearing me say this and you're like, yeah, that's me. Codependent No More by Melanie Beattie. Such a great book about codependency. And nurses are the highest codependent. I want to say like 70 to 80% of nurses fall into like codependent categories.
Whoa.
We're drawn to the profession.
Wow. That is unsettling.
We want to help. We want to ease suffering, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so just being aware of that, because that a lot of times we can be overwhelmed and it's not even our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Not even it's
Mm-hmm.
not even ours.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
I think
I
that with like mindfulness prayer or prayer, like even just like the serenity prayer from recovery, like just the wisdom to know what is yours and what is not, and the wisdom
mm-hmm.
to worry about what you can and what you can't. Just that simple practice, giving it over to God, giving it over to the universe, surrendering, that helps me a lot.
Yeah. Did you guys know that you can like willfully surrender? It doesn't have to be like an arm wrestle to where like the universe is like, you must surrender and you're running away from it. The first time I learned that, I was working with Sarah Kleiner and I was like, wait, what? There's a choice here? I get to opt in? That was a big moment. That was a big moment for me. Uh, yeah. Oh, also I love this one. This is totally a Rob phrase. The that's future Shelby or future Laura's problem.
Yeah,
Rob used that a lot when he was in the military of just like, that's future Rob's problem. Like today Rob has these tasks. I will worry about
right.
that when I actually have to is really, really helpful as well. Of like, is there anything I actually need to get done today? Is there anything that I need to get done this week or this month? Can help kind of like stagger it out and chunk it down. And yeah, team, this is all just training ground. I was talking on our mentorship call this morning of like the highs and the lows of entrepreneurship. They're not going to go away. Like this
No,
roller coaster lasts forever. You are just building your capacity to hold it and to ride it and to enjoy it. And it does get more fun, but the highs and the lows still exist. You just have more
yes,
perspective to bring to the table.
absolutely. Yep. The roller coaster ride is the dream, and we have to learn to ride it instead of
Mm-hmm.
grasping the rail. Like we can throw our hands in the air every once in a while now, which is nice. It's a
Yeah.
lot more fun.
Yeah. I have a lot of toddler metaphors coming to mind right now, but you know, like when someone's kid is melting down in a TJ Maxx and you're like, oh man, they either need a nap or a snack. And the mom is over it, throws them over their shoulder. And my mom tells a story about me when I was like a baby that I freaked out in a store once. And I was like grabbing the security checkers by the door, you know, like the
Yeah.
beepers. I was like clawing. I can't even imagine clawing at those, trying, just screaming. And my mom is like ripping me off, trying to just get me to the car. I needed to go lay down, get in a quiet space, have something to eat. Like we can either just be picked up by divine intervention and be carried out to the car, or we can kick and scream and claw all the way to the
Right.
car.
Yeah.
It's all within your choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So bookmark this one for the next time you feel overwhelmed. I think that it was light and kind of funny. And I bet by the end of listening to it, you may not feel overwhelmed anymore. Hopefully, we'll give you a little bit of perspective. And we would love to see you at the Spirituality and Nurse Coaching Workshop. It's something so close to my heart. I think that my goal of this workshop is that at the end, you will be completely comfortable bringing it into your practice in a way that feels aligned and that feels really safe moving forward. And this could work for even work as a nurse in the hospital. This is kind of it's nurse coaching, but it carries over everywhere. So
Mm-hmm.
hope to see you guys there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Come join us. We'll see you in a few days and we will be here same time, same place next week. Bye,
All right.
everybody.
See you guys.